Hey, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of the Social Angle podcast. I am so excited to be joined virtually by Steve Oswald, who is our executive art director at ASI. Steve is a brilliant artist and brings so much talent to his role at ASI. I'm really excited to talk with him today about creating your visual identity on social media, because I know he'll have a lot of really good gems for us. So how are you doing today, Steve?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me. I'm
Yeah.
excited.
Thank
Yeah.
you so much for joining me. It's a true pleasure. So, I would love to learn a little bit more about you, and I'm sure our audience would as well. So, tell me a little bit more about yourself and your current role at ASI.
Yeah, sure. Let me take you way back. I'm going to take you back to, I've been around a little bit. Um, right out of high school, I got a job creating artwork for screen printers.
That's awesome.
I really had no idea what I was doing. I was getting ready to go to art school.
Okay.
And, at the time, everything was done by hand. There were no computers. I like to say that I'm from the BC era, before computers. So I had that experience where everything was done by hand, inking, cutting ruby lith, drawing, a lot of hands-on drawing. Um, so I put myself through art school doing that. Um, and then I was hired right out of school at ASI. So I've been with
That's
ASI for 33 years.
that's awesome. That is
33
so
years.
cool.
Yeah. So I'm feel fortunate and I'm proud of it. A lot of people don't, um, you know, aren't with a company for that long anymore. So I started with ASI in December of 1987.
Okay.
I was hired as a paste up artist. Again, there were no computers. Remember that. So everything was like galleys and stat cameras and inking and all that stuff. So I was doing changes for one of our publications, the media file.
Okay.
And shortly after that, I was more interested in the marketing end of it. So I switched from doing catalog pages to marketing ASI products and services. Um, so fast forward to present day, like you said, I am the executive art director of marketing services. I assist the creative director in running the department of 8 designers. Yeah, eight, nine, would be the ninth. Um, Mostly I am involved with helping to develop the look and feel and direction of our marketing,
Okay.
our graphics. Um, and that's for all marketing communications for pretty much every product and service.
Okay.
And some of those vehicles are email marketing, print, brochures, ads, um, on-site graphics for shows, video/motion graphics, all electronic advertising, including social media ads, and really our for the design department, our clients are internal clients. So we work with distributor marketing, distributor sales. We work with supplier marketing and supplier sales, the events team. So we'll create, for example, for the events team, we're creating um, marketing material for the Power Summit, the Council Awards, Distributor Choice Awards. So it's, developing the look and feel, somewhat messaging, what that's going to look like, on-site materials for when you're actually at the events,
Wow.
things like that. For supplier and distributor teams, it's right out of the gate, it's membership. So we're looking to gain more members at ASI and all the support material for that end of the business. Things like ESP. We market both sides again for the distributors. We're trying to educate and show them the benefits of ESP for having an ESP license, and suppliers, maybe it's getting them to advertise on the page, on ESP itself,
Okay.
ESP websites, catalogs. We still do catalogs, and that would be the same. So it'd be marketing to suppliers, to get them advertised in the catalog, and then circulation for distributors. And that goes with the magazines also.
May
Um,
I ask, may I ask for you, like, for your role, since you have so many designers underneath you, 8 you were saying, is your role more strategy based, or do you still get time to do hands-on design work, like for clients both internally and externally? And do you have a preference? Like, are you like, I'd rather be in front of Adobe Creative Suite, or are you like, I like kind of looking back and designing things from a high level and somebody else kind of like executing the creation of it?
Yeah, I like it all. I do. I do it all. So yeah, I do work at the high level. Um, conception again, look and feel development, and then I might be responsible for working it out and saying that here's our color palette, here's our support graphics, here's a logo if necessary. Um, and then yeah, so yeah, I would, as that gets rolled out, yeah, I would be doing some of the work myself also. Yeah, and I enjoy all of that.
That's cool. That's nice to be in a role where you feel like all those boxes are checked and it's like it's satisfying, because I think sometimes what happens when you get into a role, and especially if maybe you've been in one career industry for a long time, it can feel stale because you might feel like, oh, it's Groundhog's Day. I'm doing like just strategy, or hey, I'm just creating creative assets. But to have kind of like that change is probably nice. And also, too, the longevity of your career, like, do you miss doing things by hand? Do you like the transition to digital? Like, what was that like for you?
Yeah, that was actually a little bit of an odd time. That was, believe it or not, I know when it was. It was April of 1994 when I
Your
first
memory
started
is
working on a Mac.
amazing.
Yeah, so I get like, oh, I was in kindergarten. You've been at ASI. I wasn't even born yet. Steve came with the building. I've heard it all. Yeah, so, but okay. Yeah, so I'm glad I've had those experiences. Designers these days, a lot of them can't really draw or didn't understand, lighting and shadow and perspective,
Yeah.
the way I might have learned it. So yeah, I'm glad I had those, those fine motor skills too of cutting and inking and painting, whiting out and all that stuff.
Yeah, it must make you like a much more like richer artist. I would think anyway. That's your zone of genius. I don't pretend to know anything about design. It's why I do social media. But for somebody who's had so much longevity, like I can imagine like to be more hands-on with art and to build something from the ground up versus like translating that into digital. Like you definitely are ahead of the curve probably when it comes to like knowing how to start like a concept from start to finish for a client. Like that's really cool. May I ask also too what design school you went to? Is that okay?
Yeah, that's absolutely. It's no longer there. I was Art Institute of Philadelphia is where I went to
Oh,
school.
okay.
Yeah,
Wow.
but
Okay.
it's
Art.
not there anymore.
Yeah. Oh,
Yeah.
bummer. Yeah, that's right. I totally forgot. I know. Well, thank you so much for giving me some of your background. That's awesome. So, I think personally, one of the things that people struggle with when it comes to social media is creating a visual identity, especially when they're in an industry that might be overpopulated. For example, I follow a lot of creative entrepreneurs, people who are coaches, they're service-based business, they're other social media managers on Instagram because that's my thing. And sometimes I go from one feed to the next and it's like I can spot the Canva template and then I feel like it's the same kind of messaging or colors. There's a lot of like soft earth tones and people in like hippie hats and stuff like that. So it's kind of like there's nothing to tell me like if I was coming there as a customer, like who they are, and what they represent. And really, I think that's important, especially when you want to set yourself apart. So what are some things that promo professionals can do to cultivate like and lean into branding on social media?
Sure. Let me take you through a short list of things. First would be their logo.
Okay.
If they don't already have a logo, a lot of people, and this goes for designers and non-designers.
Okay.
I'm going to try to like approach it sort of both ways here.
Good. Okay.
Um, So, a lot of people will agonize over a logo because really, your logo is everything. The logo is the
Yeah.
overall brand, the life, if you will.
Hmm.
And it's often, really the first step in developing the brand identity.
Yeah.
Um, so you should spend time on a logo if you don't have one, or maybe updating it if necessary. But also, while you're thinking about how to create your brand identity just on social, you should think about how you want it to appear across the board:
Okay.
social, website, emails, print, the whole bit. I wouldn't just funnel it and think about how your brand is going to look just on Instagram or Facebook or LinkedIn or whatever. Think
Okay.
about the big picture.
So scaling it
Um,
across like mediums, whether it's print, digital, so everything kind of ties together. You're
right, and it's cohesive, exactly. So it's familiar
okay.
as
Right.
it's developed. Um, the next thing I like to talk about is color.
Okay.
The color choices that you make are very important. Color um, has the ability to affect people's mood and emotions.
Right.
So when choosing a color palette, you should keep in mind the message that you want to communicate, and it's like the company's tone or the voice.
Okay.
Um, your primary task is really to make your visuals, your posts, eye-catching. Most page followers look through updates by scrolling news feeds, right?
Yeah.
And you have less than a second almost, you probably know better than I do, to make users stop and read your message.
I think it's
Um,
like less. It used to be like 11 seconds and now it's 8 because our attention span is just surely like slowly being shot.
yeah, right.
Like,
Yeah, it gets shorter and shorter. People are
like,
just like this.
can I ask you too, like a
So
little
the
bit?
use of color can
Oh,
make them stop.
can I ask about that? Like a follow-up question for color, because I think
Sure.
like to me that always seems super abstract, like color and messaging, like in my personal opinion. So like when you're choosing colors to inform that logo, that submark, for part of your brand identity, your visuals, like do you have any tips or things that you would recommend?
Yeah, you want to really you know choose a color palette that you're going to work with
Okay.
that reflects your brand.
Okay.
Um, you want it to be instantly recognizable. So you want it to be consistent again. So based on whatever your brand is it fun and light and yay, maybe it's yellow and bright greens or something, or if it's a little more corporate, maybe it's navy blues and grays and um, it really has to be a reflection of what you want your brand to be, your color palette. And I
Okay.
suggest, making a color palette. And you can just Google, color palettes, fun color palettes, and work from your logo. The logo, which is what we talked about back at the beginning, is really the starting point for everything. So if your logo is blue, you can build off of that.
Okay.
Okay, it's a good starting point. So you can, yeah. So you want to choose a color palette that really reflects your brand's personality.
Okay, a color palette that reflects their personality. So like the starting point is always going to be the logo, and then like you can pull some information like prior. Like is that what you do? Like do you like to create mood boards on like Pinterest? Are you somebody who's like old school and clipping out magazines and like doing collages? Like what do you like to do when coming up with that inspiration?
Yeah, I will, I always start with something before I hit, Google or start searching different things. I always try to um, start something fresh and new out of my own head. All right, so if I'm
Interesting.
a good example of this would be for what we did for ASI show a couple years ago, where ASI show's branding in the past was very gray overall. We wanted to, put some life back into it and have some bright colors. So we went through a whole process of, what those 5 or 6 colors might be. Sort of the main color, ASI red is always red, but what are those support colors that help it? Um, and we came up with a bright green, a purple, actually two purples, um, an orange, a gold color. So along with the gray.
Yeah.
So, the usage and the combination of those colors is really what makes it work.
It's beautiful. And I've seen it in some of the social media graphics that I've recently had, well, I should say Sarah's had created for me for social and some of the ads that we're currently doing and some of our organic posts on social. And I like it. And I remember when I started in February of last year, I saw some of the older, like kind of branding and stuff. So it's interesting to see like that transition, like you had one identity and then you transformed it into something completely different. And it's really, really cool.
Right.
So,
Yeah. And not to get off track, I mean, the thought process behind that was, so we have this project, we're going to rebrand the shows.
yeah.
And how do we even start that? So we looked at like, so what are the 4 or 5 um, main reasons people attend trade shows? And it's new products, it's education, it's networking, it's new business. So
Right.
we came up with the concept of discovery starts here. And that's, our red color. So we assign these different sort of entities to different colors. And we say, new product discovery starts here. And that's purple. So every time you see this purple graphic, you can sort of associate it with the purple. And the same goes with, education, I believe, is yellow. Business is the lime green. So you sort of make that relationship um, to those segments.
I'm really glad that you gave that example because I think it makes it so crystal clear for people. And again, as we were talking earlier before we started recording, it's where to start, where to start. And maybe if you're somebody who doesn't have a design background like you and is an artist and has been like formally trained, but also has accumulated so much like wonderful experience, it's intimidating. You're just
Yeah,
like, is this the right shade of orange? Like, should I be using this design? Like, what is it? Me. And so I feel like it's really cool that these are some simple steps like people can just kind of take, starting with having their logo, having consistency, thinking about scaling that logo and that brand identity, those colors across the different channels that you have, whether it's your website, social media, print, t-shirts, however you're going to portray yourself, and if that works across, and then kind of refining that. So I really like that a lot. Do you have any recommendations for people, like any tools, tricks, workflows for maybe creating on brand graphics for social?
sure. The first thing I would say is to make templates
Okay. Templates are
for the designer and the non-designer. It's templates make it faster and easier to create content that is consistent with your brand's identity.
okay.
Um, so, and you can make several templates. So let's just say they're posting for, they're maybe a new product or it's education based or some kind of other announcement. You can make a template for each one of those posts. Okay, so you would have a template for a new product, you'd have a template for education, you'd have a template for um,
A new service.
a new service. Great, thanks. Um, so they can be different, and maybe we can use the ASI show example of different colors. So maybe you choose a different, maybe simple support graphic, um, using a different color for each. And again, we want consistency. We don't want to stray too far off because again, we want it to look familiar.
Right.
So the post is familiar from a company standpoint, but if I'm getting, an education post from ABC company, I want that to be familiar also.
Okay.
So with pre-made templates, um, your audience your audience is going to know where the post comes from and what kind of message it communicates.
Cool. So what about like software? Do you have favorite software? Like as a designer, I would love to know your feeling, because I feel like it's very polarizing and controversial for people. It's Adobe Creative Suite versus Canva. Like, have you embraced it? What do you think of it? Have you ever tried Canva? Like, are you still Adobe all the way because of your design background? Like, what do you like, or what do you recommend?
Well, I'd have to recommend Adobe Suite because that's what I grew up on. You
Okay.
know, um, I have used Corel Draw.
Corel.
Corel Draw.
Okay.
I believe it's still around. I think it is. A lot of that's more popular in the actual screen printing industry. A lot of screen print artists choose to use Corel Draw for whatever reason. I don't know, but it's very similar to Illustrator and has some of the functionality that you might find in Photoshop. Um, but yeah, I mean, for most social media posts, um, I'll say it's mostly image based. So,
Yeah.
Photoshop, the combination of Photoshop and Illustrator.
You think is like
Um,
the best. Okay.
yeah,
Okay.
that's what it is for me anyway.
Okay. So
Um,
like Illustrator, more vector images like logos, submarks, things that you can scale, and then Photoshop like templates. That's kind of like how I've seen some people break it down for themselves for using those two tools. Would you say that's similar, or do you have another workflow that you
yeah,
recommend?
no, that would be true. Yeah, I mean, I would do. I always seem to combine the two. Like, if there's a logo or some piece of vector art that I want to include in my post, um, or graphic image, whatever. I usually end up combining them if it's a raster image, a pixel-based image, like we're
Hmm.
gonna post on Instagram or a video or something. I would take the vector graphics from Illustrator and bring them into Photoshop onto a layer, and you can manipulate size, color. You can do whatever you want there. But when creating support graphics like icons or um, typography,
Yeah.
even. I might do all that in Illustrator because I feel more comfortable. It's really wherever your comfort level is. Um, but the combination of the two, Photoshop and Illustrator, um, I think is a safe bet. Other than, if we're talking about video, then we're talking about Premiere or After Effects or something if you're advanced like that. But most people just shoot stuff on their phone and posting it. So
One of those
yeah.
people. But no, I think that's cool. And I really like what you said about what you're comfortable with. Cause I think that's another thing too, is people feel shy about starting because they compare, they see other people's work. Like, somebody might see your work and be like, oh my God, like this is awesome. But it's like, you've had 30 plus years of refining this and like you went to school for it. And it's like, your skill level is completely different than somebody who's just like literally like, I just started a Facebook page, I need to have a branded cover, a branded profile image. The other photos that I'm filling out for this profile need to all be kind of together. Like maybe I just start with Canva, or there's other like apps like Teza or things like that, because that's less intimidating than opening up Photoshop and kind of seeing all these different like buttons and knowing where to start with that. So I really think that's cool because design, like good design, in my personal opinion, from an outsider perspective, I really feel like it depends like on that person's style and what works for them and what works well for their brand. So whatever can communicate that in a workflow that feels right to you is really what matters. Like the tool doesn't necessarily matter, in my opinion.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. That's absolutely true.
So
Style, everybody has their own style. If I had to say my style is, and sometimes I got to catch myself, I always seem to like things bigger and tighter. Like my type will always be bolder and kern tighter and
really,
and things like that. So, but you really have to your style. You have to adjust to the brand.
okay,
So I'm saying that your design style doesn't always work for every brand. Okay, you might have to adjust your style to fit that brand if
okay,
you're a designer. Now I know we're gonna have lots of people doing their own posts and things like that, but I wouldn't design something just based on, oh, I like that, I like the way it looks. Think about what you're designing it for.
okay. Being intentional about what you
Yes.
create and if it serves a purpose. Okay, I like that. I think that's smart too. And I think that takes out the overwhelm as well. Is, hey, it's not about like having 50 different options. It's about what is this post like? What's the purpose? what's the intention it's serving for the brand. And then it's like, if you have that strong brand identity, those brand guidelines that you've created, that great like logo and submark and everything, you can just be like, all right, well, I have that on deck. Like I know what everything means, and then I can put something together in a template that I've saved, like you were
Right.
saying before, depending on like the purpose of the post. So that's really smart. I like that, Steve.
Yeah.
So anything else you'd like to add before we end with our fun question as always?
Yeah. Yeah, we didn't really talk about photography too much. A
Oh,
lot of people are just shooting images on their phones or whatever. And, part of the brand identity and the style
mm,
is is to try to shoot those images
okay.
this in the same style,
Okay.
right? So there's an identity there also. Not having, if you have a product and you're shooting, a mug, maybe shoot it at the same angle or with the same lighting or something consistent in your photography, that's consistent, with your color palette and even the words that you use, the tone, um, the style of your text and your is also brand consistent. So,
Yep.
in other words, um, you want to write if you're using copy and text, you want to sort of write it in the same style across, consistently.
Okay.
You don't want to, wake up one morning and write. Here's a quick post, and then the next day write this, epic thing. So you want some consistency, and that's part of the brand and the consistency also. So I keep that in mind.
And I think that's a good nuance to highlight, because I think, again, copy can be something tricky. It's like, are you short and punchy? Are you somebody who speaks maybe more like Wendy's on Twitter, where you're sarcastic and you roast customers? Or are you more educational, maybe like,
Exactly.
a university or something like that, where you're talking about the benefits of student life here, the great faculty you have, like what's the tone, and it's more educational. So I think that's really good, is
Yeah.
think before, like pause before you post. And also too, for photography, like piggybacking on that, for people who may have trouble with replicating consistent photography, would you recommend having like a preset or a couple of presets that are in line with your brand identity? So like if you're having maybe outside work done for you, or a photo comes your way, and you can kind of make it work for the visual of your brand on social.
Yeah, absolutely. Whatever tips or tricks like that you can find to gain consistency across the board
Okay.
um, is absolutely great. Yes.
Okay, so presets too. Okay,
Yeah.
cool. This is
Sure.
awesome. There's
Yeah.
so many good gems in this. And again, guys, I think, like just starting, and hopefully from this conversation with Steve, you'll have some really good pointers to help you stay consistent on brand, so your audience can recognize you throughout social media. So let's end with our fun question. And I just want to ask you, like, where do you draw inspiration as a creative? Like, I would love to know.
Well, I'm going to start by saying everywhere. Um, but usually what I like to do first is like, ask the question, what can I do that's my own and unique to me? So I'll try to problem solve that way. Um, but I'm always aware, like as a creative, I like to say, we look at the world a little differently. So,
I love
if I'm watching TV, you name the platform, I always see something, a color combination or a type treatment, or maybe a little animation or something that I sort of just put in my head um, and keep there. So, commercials, people click through commercials. I watch commercials because they're creative, not all of them, but they're creative and they're fun. And, I always look for something there.
it.
There's
Okay.
something that I could borrow from all the time. Everyday life. I see, some sign on the building that has a cool font or a stylistic thing to it that I might want to use. Um, the automotive industry is great. They set a lot of the trends for color.
Really? You think so? That's like across the board, you think they influence a lot of industries?
I think so, and fashion too,
Yeah,
they're
fashion 100%.
if
I
you're
would have
just
thought
looking for color palettes or treatments or something, you could always rely on automotive and especially fashion.
fashion.
Um,
Nice.
Nature, lighting, shadows is always inspirational. I love architecture. Um, and then there's, other people's work too. I'm not saying go steal it, but use it as an inspiration. There's a lot of good stuff out there and there's a lot of junk too. So you have to recognize it and you have to see something that you like. And again, adapt it to your brand. Don't just say, hey, that's cool, I'm going to use it. But, you might have to, well, you'll want to alter it slightly, change it, and adapt it to what you're trying to accomplish. Um, and then, of course, there's the internet for anything you want, you know. uh,
Google search, man.
yeah, I'll just search whatever, whatever the topic might be, and then maybe just click over to the images and just surf through and look for little tidbits of inspiration, something like, okay, that might be a good starting point. Let me try to start with whatever this might be.
Okay.
Um, and
I
go
love it. It's always interesting, like creative people, what they pull from and what are maybe like their favorite mediums or elements and things like that, and how that all kind of comes together for their unique style. Like you were saying about like how you notice what you gravitate towards, or like you have a certain sense of like being hyper aware of certain things. Like you'll see flowers and be like, oh, I really like that color. Or like you said, typography on a sign or things like that. Is there like a favorite creator? Like you were saying, looking at other ones, is there other ones that inspire you that you really think are cool?
I don't know about a favorite creator by name.
Okay.
Um, right now, I love the insurance commercials, like the Geico commercials on
Yeah.
Progressive. They are so witty and fun and, just make you think.
Cool.
Yeah, things like that.
Really
I like
nice.
it, yeah.
That's awesome, Steve. Well, thank you so much for your time today. I appreciate it. Thank you so much for sharing your knowledge. I'm excited to share this episode.
Yeah, thanks. Thanks for having me. It was fun.
Yeah. Have a good day, Steve. Take care. Great
All right,
having
Melissa. Thank you.